This happened a few months ago. I'm Tom, 34, and I'm just a middle school science teacher. I often take weekend trips with friends to clear my head after a long semester. This time, we decided on a cabin deep in the northern woods. The place was old and creaky, surrounded by tall pine trees and a quiet, icy lake. We thought it would be the perfect escape. I've never stopped thinking about what happened there. The first night was pretty normal. We cooked dinner and joked around. It was around midnight when I heard strange rustling outside. It seemed like just animals, right? I told myself that, even if my heart started racing a little. But then, a howl broke the stillness. It sent chills down my spine. I glanced at my friends. They were exchanging uneasy looks, just like me. Maybe it was just imagination, but I wasn't sure. The next morning we woke up to find bizarre footprints in the fresh snow. They were long and animal-like, but way too big. I thought maybe it was just my mind playing tricks, but my friends seemed to notice too. We joked about it, saying it was a bear or some sort of wolf. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As the weekend dragged on, I felt more anxious. We went out for a hike and I kept looking over my shoulder. Something didn't feel right. I wanted to voice my concerns, but when I opened my mouth, the words wouldn't come. It was weird. Then Zach, one of my friends, decided to go off on his own to hunt. I remember feeling a knot in my stomach as he walked away. When night fell and Zach still hadn't returned, panic set in. We called his name, but all we heard was the crunching of leaves under our feet and the eerie sounds of nature. That's when I started spiraling. I heard whispers and saw shadows darting behind trees. Maybe I was losing it, but something felt wrong. By the time dawn broke, I was shaking. I felt like something had been hunting us through the woods. I can't explain it. I kept catching glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye. Just for a split second, I swore I saw something there, right at the edge of the trees. I felt cold as ice. Finally, we gathered ourselves and searched for Zach. I wanted to believe he was fine, that he had just lost track of time. But deep down, I thought, maybe it wasn't just animals out there. We went further into the woods, calling for him. I didn't want to stop. My heart raced, the shadows felt alive. Then we found his backpack. It was just sitting there, abandoned. Anxiety twisted in my stomach. When we left the cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. I still see shadows in my dreams, elongated figures lurking just beyond the trees. I think of that weekend often, trying to piece it all together. Did we really encounter something otherworldly, or was it our minds playing tricks? Then I heard it, the howl again. I turned to the woods. Nobody was there. The howl echoed once more, piercing through the silence like a knife. I was rooted to the spot, heart thumping in my chest. My friends were becoming ghosts of their former selves. They shifted nervously, glancing toward the dark edge of the woods where the sound seemed to emerge. "That can't be a wolf," Cassie whispered, her face pale. "It sounds different." "Maybe it's just a coyote," I suggested, though the unease in my own voice betrayed my attempt at reassurance. I wanted to be brave for them, but the weight of last weekend pressed heavily on my shoulders. We decided to leave the cabin behind, but I felt drawn to the woods like something in them was beckoning me. My mind raced with 1,000 questions, but I couldn't voice any. Had Zach wandered into danger, or was something worse afoot? As we pushed through the trees, everything felt alive, too aware. A pulsing awareness that made me twitchy. Then we stumbled upon something that made the hair stand up on my neck. It was a circle of stones, blackened and charred. The surrounding ground looked disturbed, like something had been there recently, forcing its way into this reality. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" I asked, dread settling in as I traced the circle with my eyes. My friends shook their heads in unison, uneasiness washing over them. Without warning, a branch snapped behind us. We all turned, hearts racing, and there it was, just a fleeting figure darting behind a tree. My breath caught in my throat. "Did you see that?" I asked. "Yeah," Jacob said, voice barely above a whisper. "It looked tall. Maybe it was just a deer." "I don't think that's what it was," I replied, my skin prickling with uncertainty. We should keep moving. Panic sank in. Every sound felt exaggerated. The wind rustled through the leaves, sounding too much like whispers, too deliberate. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. Then as we continued deeper into the woods, we discovered more. A torn piece of fabric caught in a bush. It was Zach's favorite camo jacket. I reached out, clutching the fabric like a lifeline. My throat tightened. "This is his," I asserted, looking to my friends. "What if something got him?" Cassie's voice trembled, and I could see the fear mirrored in her eyes. As I turned to answer, a sharp noise cut across the air. The unmistakable sound of something large crashing through the underbrush, moving closer. I could hear it breathing, low and ragged. A terrifying thought flashed in my mind. It wasn't just animals out here. We took a few hesitant steps backward, but it was already too late. The thing stepped into the clearing, illuminated by the fading light. It stood there, tall and gaunt, its eyes glinting with a strange hunger. Then everything went dark. The forest, the air, even the sky seemed to dim, and I felt a dull thud within my chest, as if the weight of the woods was coming down upon me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then I heard a voice. A low, guttural whisper I couldn't comprehend, wrapping itself around my mind. Whatever was out there was no longer in the shadows. We were no longer safe. "Run!" I finally yelled, but it felt like a last act of defiance. I started to backtrack, feeling the ground beneath me shift, almost trying to trip me. My friends looked back, terror written on their faces, and just as abruptly as it began, the darkness slammed back against my senses. But I could still make out its silhouette, a wretched figure rooted into the earth. Whatever we had stumbled upon was far worse than I ever imagined. That's when I saw it. The glimmering eyes like twin stars shining in the gloom glaring back at me. And I knew. I wasn't just running from the darkness. I was running for my life. I darted through the trees, the sound of my friends' hurried footsteps echoing around me. Panic surged as branches snagged at my clothes, pulling me back like the woods themselves were trying to keep me from escaping. "Keep up," I shouted, but the urgency in my voice felt hollow. I had no assurance they could hear me over the thumping of our hearts and the crackle of the underbrush. The only thing that mattered was distance. I stole a quick glance behind us and caught sight of it. The creature loomed tall against the backdrop of darkening trees. Its eyes glowed, bright and haunting, tracking us with a predatory focus. The breath hitched in my throat. This isn't real, I thought, but the jarring weight of my own fright shattered that illusion. "Where do we go?" Cassie cried, her voice strained and panicked. "Just run," I replied, desperate to keep the horror from overtaking me as well. Soon we reached a small ravine filled with uneven rocks, and I hesitated briefly before leading my friends down into it. We ducked behind a cluster of boulders, breathless and trembling. The shadows closed in around us. The moon struggled to break through the tangled branches overhead. We were hidden but still too close to the creature. I could hear it moving, the sound of heavy, deliberate footfalls drifting through the air. They were soft, but they echoed like a drum, sending chills skittering down my spine. "We can't stay here," Jacob whispered, fear twisting his voice. "It'll find us." "No, we wait," I said firmly, though my own heart thudded against my ribs. Maybe it will pass, maybe it's not interested in us. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The rustling continued, as if the creature was circling us, drawing closer. A sudden crack nearby made me flinch. Someone had stepped on a twig. Was it me, or one of my friends? I held my breath, hopelessly wishing for silence as the tension hung thick in the air. "Give me your phone," I murmured to Jacob. His eyes were wide, reflecting the moonlight. I needed the light, needed to see, but I didn't want to show our location. He reluctantly pulled it out and I quickly switched it on. The glow cast long shadows, revealing the rocky walls of our hiding spot. But when I turned to check the creature's position, panic surged within me anew. It was no longer in the clearing. "Where is it?" I breathed, glancing around. My pulse raced as I suddenly felt the weight of being watched. The primal instinct to flee gripped my insides, yet I fought to stay still, hoping we were still undetected. "Turn it off," Cassie whispered too loudly, terror sharpening every syllable. Then the phone slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the rocks, and the screen flashed as it hit. I felt my heart drop as the light illuminated a small gap in the cliff wall behind us, an opening that was barely big enough for a person. A thought struck me and my heart pounded harder. What if we can escape here? Maybe it goes in circles, Jacob whispered back, panic tinging his voice. If it's still out there, it might just follow its own path. We could slip out now. The sound of the creature shifted, and a low growl rumbled through the air. It seemed to know we were here. I felt that hint of dread creeping back, the sense of danger breaching our fragile safety. We need to decide. Now, I urged, looking toward the crevice. But just as I finished speaking, I caught a glimpse of those glowing eyes back in the clearing. They focused directly on us and didn't waver. It was aware of our presence. That feeling of dread coiled tighter around my chest. The adrenaline surged through me, ready to act. We go. As I scrambled to my feet, a flash of movement caught my eye. Something lurking in the shadows, no longer afraid of the light. It came closer, and I realized we had only moments left. And then something in my gut dropped as I charged toward the opening. Whatever was out there, it wasn't allowing us to escape easily. I lunged toward the crevice, nearly tripping on loose rocks as I dove inside. My heart raced, not just from fear, but from the desperate hope that this narrow passage could lead us to safety. I felt the rush of the cool, damp air against my skin as I turned to see if my friends were following. "Come on, quickly," I hissed, glancing back at them, panic clawing at my throat. Cassie and Jacob squeezed in behind me, anxiety etched on their faces. The crevice was tighter than I'd hoped. Shadows stretched around us, blocking off any clear view of the clearing we'd just left. I could hear their shallow breaths as they tried to steady themselves, and a low growl rumbled in the distance, vibrating through the rocks. It was close. Too close. "Do you think it saw us?" Cassie whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice shaking. "But we can't wait here. We need to keep moving." I pushed forward, feeling the jagged edges of the rocks scrape my arms. In the darkness, the only sounds were our breaths and the creature's growls mingling with the rustle of leaves outside. I tried to focus on the path ahead, but every instinct screamed to turn back, to bolt back into the open. Then I heard something else, a faint whisper, like someone calling my name. It floated through the darkness. My heart plummeted. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Cassie nodded, her eyes wide. "It sounded like you, but how?" "I don't know." My pulse quickened again. "We can't waste time, this way." I pushed deeper into the crevice, the opening widening slightly as I moved further in. "Wait, please don't leave me behind." Jacob's voice came from just a few feet back. I turned and extended my hand to him, feeling the panic rise within me. "I'm not going anywhere without you," I reminded him. He grabbed my hand and together we pulled him through the narrowing space. We stumbled into a small cavern, dimly lit with an eerie bioluminescent moss clinging to the rocky walls. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I caught my breath, momentarily dazed by the otherworldly glow. "Where are we?" Cassie asked, looking around, her voice strained. "I don't know," I replied, my anxiety creeping back. "But it's a dead end. We might be trapped." "Not if we can find another way out," Jacob suggested, checking the cavern walls. "Maybe there's another opening." "Or maybe this is it," I said. "If that thing finds us here." I didn't want to think about it. My eyes darted around the cavern as I fought to shake off the sense of claustrophobia creeping in. Then it hit me. This was not just any cave. My heart raced with realization. "It's a Wendigo's lair," I breathed, the words tumbling out in disbelief. I had heard the stories, but I never thought I'd be in one. If we're in here, then it has to be close. Fear and adrenaline surged through me as the low growl echoed again, louder this time, shaking the very walls around us. My vision narrowed, and I frantically searched for a way out. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement near the back of the cavern, a shadow lurking. "Guys, look," I pointed, my voice rising. In that instant, we all instinctively pressed against the far wall, breath caught in our throats as the creature's shadow shifted closer. And then, everything went dark. As our eyes adjusted to the black void, the growl intensified, sending chills down my spine. I could hardly breathe. I wanted to scream, but fear froze my throat. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around us with a suffocating pressure. "What do we do?" Cassie managed to whisper. Her voice quivered, matching the terror in my gut. I don't know." I glanced around, desperate. "Maybe we can find another way out. Just stay quiet." Jacob started to shuffle to my side when something skittered across the cave floor, just out of sight. I turned sharply, nearly knocking into Cassie as I stumbled back against the wall. The growl escalated, vibrating through my bones, sending me into a panic. "Did you hear that?" Jacob's voice trembled. "What if it's blocking our way?" Cassie asked, eyes wide. "Keep moving," I urged, pushing past them, my heart pounding louder than the growl. I could see the faint outline of the cavern walls, enough to guide us deeper. But I was painfully aware that the thing we were escaping was right behind us. We moved slowly, keeping our backs against the damp, moss-covered stone. Suddenly, the ground beneath me gave way, an uneven step, and I fell into a hollow where the bioluminescent moss grew brighter. I landed hard, the breath knocked out of me. "Are you okay?" Jacob's voice echoed from above, worry clinging to every syllable. "I think so," I called back, scrambling to my feet. As I stood, the glow illuminated the hollow, revealing more of the cavern's strange beauty. But there, jutting from the walls, were markings. Scratches, perhaps, made by the Wendigo's claws or something else entirely. It sent a wave of nausea rushing through me. "Don't move," Cassie said, her voice a blend of fear and determination. "We can't separate, we have to stick together." I nodded, my mind racing. The strange markings felt like a warning. I looked back at them, catching their fearful expressions, and suddenly I regretted pushing forward. "Let's go back." Before we could retreat, the growl shifted to a throaty roar, echoing through the chambers as the creature lunged into view, its grotesque form silhouetted by the glow of the moss. Its eyes glinted like shards of ice, and the air suddenly turned ice cold. It was inching closer, muscles rippling beneath its frostbitten skin. I could feel my heart hammering against my chest, each beat a frantic plea for escape. "Run!" I yelled, my instincts kicking in as I grabbed Jacob's arm, pulling him toward the narrow path I'd just traversed. We nearly collided as Cassie stumbled behind us, a shriek escaping her lips. I didn't dare look back as we sprinted toward what felt like freedom. The growl turned into a hunting howl, echoing through the caverns. We had to find a way out. But just as we neared the entrance, the ground beneath us trembled. The rocks shifted, threatening to give way. I risked a glance back, and the creature was almost upon us, its icy breath palpable against my skin. "Keep going!" I shouted, pushing Jacob outside first. I could feel its presence swelling behind us, a malevolence unlike anything I'd faced. The opening loomed ahead, but I could see the shadows swirling, hungry and eager to claim us. And then, just as I thought we might escape, the light flickered and dimmed. I felt something cold wrap around my ankle, pulling me backward. I struggled against whatever had a grip on my ankle. Panic surged through me like a tidal wave as I felt myself yanked backward. The chill was penetrating, clawing at my skin. I fought to pull free, but it tightened, dragging me back into the heart of darkness. "Help!" I gasped, my voice cracking. The last thing I heard was Cassie's terrified scream before everything went dark. With a violent jerk, I landed hard on the cave floor, the breath knocked from me again. Something cold brushed against my face. I shot my eyes open, but my mind was still swimming in shock. The growl resonated through the cavern once more, louder and more fervent than before. I moved instinctively, instinct tripping against logic. I scrambled to my feet and turned frantically, searching for my friends. "Cassie! Jacob!" My voice echoed, swallowed by the oppressive blackness. There was no response. My heart raced as I took a step deeper into the cave, the dim light from the moss slowly fading behind me. The air was thick, heavy with an unseen weight. Just then a flicker of light caught my eye. I squinted into the cavern, and there, further down a narrow passage, a faint glow glimmered. Hope flickered within me. Maybe it was a way out, or at least a sign of life. "Guys!" I called out again, a tiny thread of hope weaving through my fear. I moved cautiously toward the light, the growl still reverberating in the distance. As I approached the source, the light pulsed, illuminating strange symbols carved into the walls. They matched the markings I'd seen in the hollow, an unsettling realization. Suddenly, Jacob appeared at the edge of the glow, breathless and disheveled. His eyes widened. "There you are. We thought we lost you." "I thought the same about you." I hurried toward him, relief washing over me. "Where's Cassie?" Jacob shook his head, panic skimming his features. "I don't know. 1 second she was right behind me, and then she just vanished. I couldn't find her." A heavy silence settled between us. "We can't stay here. The creature—" Before I could finish, a piercing scream rang out, echoing through the caverns. My blood ran cold. It was Cassie's voice. "Cassie!" I yelled, adrenaline surging through me. I turned and sprinted toward the sound, Jacob at my heels. We darted deeper into the cave, following the scream. The glowing symbols flickered with each hurried step, like they were warning us to turn back. The growl had intensified, now sounding more like a derisive laugh. "Keep going," Jacob urged, his breathing ragged. My lungs felt like they were on fire as we raced against the unseen terror. The cave twisted and turned, a labyrinth designed to confuse us. We stumbled into a large chamber, and as we did, the light dimmed to near blackness. In front of us, Cassie was backed against the wall, the creature looming over her. Its eyes shone with hunger, and long, bony fingers stretched toward her. I could barely think. "Get away from her!" I shouted, my voice trembling. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, the darkness swallowing me whole. Silence followed, a thick blanket that pressed in from all sides. I blinked furiously, my mind racing to piece together what had just happened. All I remembered was that terrible scream and the shadow looming over Cassie. I fought to push through the haze, my instincts kicking in. My heart pounded as I called out her name again. "Cassie, are you there?" The echo of my voice faded, unanswered. I slowly got to my feet, every muscle aching from the fall. Panic had given way to dread. Where was Jacob? Where was Cassie? The mere thought of them out there, somewhere in this twisted cave, sent chills down my spine. A flickering glow danced across the walls, pulling my attention to a narrow opening I hadn't noticed before. Hesitating, I moved toward it, my palms clammy against the rough stone. As I approached, the light grew brighter, illuminating more of the cryptic symbols around me. They seemed to pulse alive in the darkness. "Jacob," I stepped closer, straining to see more. Suddenly, a sharp noise sliced through the air, a low growl that made my skin prickle. I spun around, instincts kicking. I was not alone. From the darkness, a figure emerged. My breath hitched as I recognized Jacob's silhouette, but he seemed different. His eyes were wide, wild. "We have to go now," he shouted, his voice tense. "What about Cassie?" I blurted out, panic surging through me again. He glanced back toward the graying blackness. "I don't know where she is. We can't stay here." Before I could respond, a rumble echoed through the chamber, deeper and more primal than before. The air grew heavier, wrapped in a sense of impending doom. The growl followed, closer this time, simmering with hunger. I hurried after Jacob, our footsteps echoing off damp walls as we ran back the way we had come. My thoughts raced, replaying Cassie's scream like a haunting melody. Every shadow felt like a hand reaching out, threatening to pull me back. Then, something caught my eye. Among the symbols there was one that glowed brighter than the rest, a swirling marking that looked almost alive. It resembled the creature we'd seen. "Wait," I called after Jacob. "That symbol, it's like the one from before." Before he could respond, the growl surged again, now drowning out my thoughts. Panic pulsing through me, I reached out to touch the glowing symbol. My fingers brushed against the cool rock, and I felt a surge of energy ripple through the air. It was almost as if the cave whispered secrets I couldn't comprehend. Jacob turned back, his face twisted in fear. "What are you doing? We need to—" The cavern trembled violently, rocks shifting. I gripped the symbol tighter, desperate to understand it. Suddenly, I was filled with a vision. A flash of Cassie running, the creature hunting her, unrelenting. "Cassie!" I gasped, the realization crashing down on me. We had to save her before it was too late. "We have to find her," I said, locking eyes with Jacob. "We have to go back." His uncertain nod spurred me to act. I took a step forward, squinting into the darkness. The growl echoed again, and I felt a new resolve building within me. I wouldn't let fear win. We were going to face whatever was lurking in the shadows, even if it meant risking our lives. As we plunged deeper into the cave, the air grew heavy with an unmistakable presence. And that's when I saw it. It emerged from the shadows, crouched low with razor-sharp claws and eyes glinting like shards of glass. The creature's emaciated form seemed to quiver as it locked onto us, its breath a foul mist that chilled the air. My stomach twisted in fear as I pulled Jacob closer, his eyes betraying his terror. The growl rumbled again, vibrating through the very stone beneath us, drowning out any rational thought that tried to fight its way to the surface. I had seen creatures in stories, monsters that lived in the dark corners of the imagination, but facing one in real life made every story feel trivial. It was hungry, and we were its prey. "Run!" Jacob shouted, breaking the trance. We turned back, sprinting toward the narrow opening we had just passed. Our feet slipped on the damp ground, but adrenaline pushed us forward as the creature screeched, a sound so primal it made my blood run cold. "I won't leave Cassie," I yelled, glancing back at the shadow now pursuing us. Its long limbs moved quickly, almost too quickly for what seemed possible. With every stride, a piece of my resolve crumbled. "We can't save her if we're dead," Jacob shouted, desperation in his voice. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a narrow passage to the right that I hadn't noticed before. "This way," I hesitated. The thought of leaving Cassie to face that monster alone was unbearable, but I could sense that this decision was about survival. "Okay," I cried out, following him. We barreled into the new passage, squeezing past jagged rock formations that jutted out like the teeth of an ancient beast. We tumbled into an alcove, the glow of the bizarre symbols fading behind us. Gasping for breath, I leaned against the cool stone wall, trying to calm my racing heart. "What now?" I asked, my voice shaky. Jacob was already scanning the walls, his eyes wide with fear. "There must be something here, something we can use against it," he murmured, touching the symbols with shaking fingers. I joined him, trying to decipher the strange etchings. "These aren't just markings. They tell a story." My hands moved over the images, piecing together a history I didn't fully understand. "They speak of a creature that feeds on fear and despair. It's called a Wendigo." "Great," Jacob muttered. "So what do we do about it?" "Look," I pointed to a larger symbol at the end of the alcove. It resembled a figure with outstretched arms, surrounded by a circle of distorted shapes. I felt drawn to it. Maybe if we could activate it? Before I could explain my idea further, the growl roared through the cave again, much closer this time. It was almost like the creature knew we were there. I could feel the ground shake beneath us, and the hairs on my arms stood on end. "We don't have time," Jacob yelled, panic rising in his voice. "What if we can trap it?" I pressed, hope flaring despite my fear. The legend said these symbols could contain the Wendigo spirit. I glanced at the symbol again. There was so much uncertainty, but I could feel it in my bones, the rightness of trying. I took a breath, steeling myself. "We have to try." Then everything went dark. The glow had vanished, leaving us in pitch black. I grabbed Jacob's arm, the fear crashing down on me like a wave. "Stand back," I whispered, my heart racing. "It's coming." "Then let's do this," Jacob replied, determination sharpening his voice. And that's when I heard it, the unmistakable scratching of claws against rock, right outside our alcove. We were trapped. In the suffocating darkness, the scratching grew louder. Fear clawed at my insides, tightening its grip with every vicious scrape of claw against stone. Jacob and I crouched low, pressing our backs against the cold wall of the alcove. The silence felt thick, like a living thing, and I held my breath, waiting. Then, a sickening thud echoed from just outside our hiding spot, vibrating through the earth. It was close. Too close. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out everything but the pounding of my own fear. I glanced at Jacob, his face pale under the faint remnants of light slipping through the passage. "We need a plan," he whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. The desperation seeped into his words. I tried to focus, to remember the symbols and the story they told. "If we can just figure out how to activate the symbol," I replied, my voice wavering. "Maybe it can trap it." As I spoke, I reached for the large symbol we'd spotted earlier. It looked familiar now, almost alive against the rock. I traced its edges with trembling fingers, hoping for some sign of power or a way to channel it. "Let's try to combine our strength," I said. "If we both touch it at the same time, maybe it will activate." "Okay," Jacob agreed, trying to steady his breathing. We both moved closer to the symbol. The growling outside intensified, almost as if mocking our efforts. "I can feel it," I whispered, aligning my palm with the symbol's center, feeling warmth radiate from it even in the darkness. Jacob did the same, our fingers brushing against the cold stone. "On 3, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. 1, 2, 3! We pressed our palms against the symbol, and a pulse of energy shot through the air. The ground trembled beneath us, and I felt a rush of heat, flooding the alcove like a sunburst. But instead of the expected relief, the heat became unbearable. Suddenly the growl shifted to a screech that pierced through the walls, filling the cave with its fury. The air crackled with power, but it was too soon to celebrate. The darkness around us deepened, coiling like smoke nearby, and I could see the outlines of claws and fangs glinting through the shadows. "That didn't work!" Jacob yelled, panic etched across his face. "It's still out there!" And then, just as quickly as the light had emerged, it flickered and died, plunging us back into darkness. I felt the familiar fear creeping back in, clawing at my mind. I wanted to scream but couldn't. "Hide!" I gasped, dragging Jacob toward the edges of the alcove. The scratching grew louder again, followed by a low, rasping breath that sent chills down my spine. A sudden crashing sound echoed from the passageway, and I froze. It was as though the Wendigo had grown tired of waiting, ready to break through the very walls that had protected us. I felt the vibration of its movement surging through the rock, reverberating through my body. Cassie, I thought, agony twisting my thoughts. What had happened to her? We had to figure out how to face the creature, confront it. But first, we had to survive. That's when I noticed something. An ethereal glow was barely visible, tracing the outline of the symbol. "Jacob, look!" I shouted, pointing toward it. "Keep it steady," he urged me as we huddled together. As the growling reached a deafening crescendo, I felt a surge of courage. I'd take that light if it meant having a chance against the Wendigo. We had to strike while we could. "Let's go," I said, my voice resolute. "We can't stay here." With one last look at the symbol, I took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness, ready to face whatever waited for us beyond our sanctuary. The air outside the alcove felt thicker, like stepping through molasses. I peered into the shadows, adrenaline surging through me. Jacob and I gripped each other's wrists, both knowing there was no choice but to confront whatever stood between us and any hope of escape. The growl reverberated around us, echoing against the cave walls like a sinister chorus. I squinted into the dark, heart racing as the creature's silhouette once more flickered on the edge of my vision, shifting and darting just beyond sight. Every instinct screamed for me to turn back, yet determination gripped me tighter. "Stay close," Jacob whispered, fear lacing his voice. I couldn't respond, words seemed futile in the oppressive darkness. Instead, we crept forward, echoing our footfalls against the cold stone, every sound magnified in this desolate place. Our breaths synchronized, quickly becoming frantic. I winced at every scratch and scrape in the distance. The creature's hunt continued, relentless, its eyes ever on us. Switzerland of sound rang out from somewhere above, mutterings of things just out of reach. That's when I spotted a scurrying shadow flicker behind a nearby stone. Reflexively, I halted, instincts flaring. "Did you see that?" I grabbed Jacob's arm. He nodded, eyes wide. "Not just shadows," I breathed. "It could be Cassie." The thought of her barely burrowed its way into my mind. What if she was hurt? Lost? The Wendigo was hunting us, feeding off our fear, a thought that sharpened my focus, pushing me forward. We have to keep moving. We threaded deeper into the cave, shadows pressing nearer. Light flickered. The glow from the symbols hardly illuminated our arrival. Jacob's hand tightened around mine as we edged toward an opening in the rock. Then it hit us, a breath of ice-chilled air. I gasped, half expecting it to seize me, a reminder of our predator just moments away. "Please, let this be an exit," I murmured, darting toward the growing glimmer of light. The shadows still wandered, and my heart raced with remembered voices of doubt. Could we really emerge from this alive? The light intensified, guiding our steps as we broke through into a wider cavern. There, sprawled against the wall, was Cassie, her skin pale and lined with fear, but alive. Relief washed over me, propelling me toward her, Jacob right behind me, but the growl pierced through our celebration. "Get back!" Cassie cried, scrambling to her feet just as the creature lunged from the darkness. We fumbled back into the crevice, but it didn't stop the terror that gripped me. The Wendigo was massive, its claws creating deep gouges in the rock as it searched for us. The chaos settled into a standoff. It would not find us easily. "We can stop it," I breathed, sparking a flicker of hope that had been dimmed. "Those symbols," Jacob panted, pointing toward the markings that adorned the walls. "They felt alive." Ignoring the dread curling my stomach, I refocused on the glowing figure amidst the darkness. If it contained power, perhaps it could help aid our escape, our survival. The stories, it has to be a way to confront it, to seal it. "We need to make it listen," Cassie suggested, her voice trembling but determined. The growl stopped, thick silence settling in, and I held my breath. Was it listening? "Let's channel the energy together," I urged, gripping the hands of my friends as they stood close. Moving toward the circle, we focused on the symbol. My fingers tingled, and I felt an energy ebb and flow like a heartbeat connecting us. With every ounce of thought and feeling, I willed the creature forth, envisioning the moment we'd subdue it. "Now!" I shouted, and we pressed our palms against the symbol, channeling everything we had into that pulse of light. The energy felt electric, overwhelming, as it radiated from us, warming the coolness surrounding us. In that crucial second, the Wendigo surged forward, its grotesque figure looming closer. But before it could reach us, our connection exploded. Light flooded the cavern, engulfing us. The roar echoed in a frightened cry as the creature hesitated, the very walls trembling now. "What's happening?" Cassie yelled over the eruption. "Keep pushing," I cried, pouring every ounce of hope, strength, and will into our combined energy. The light hit the creature, shimmering like a shield against its dark form. For just a moment I saw panic in its glinting eyes, and the growl turned into a wail of anguish. The circle pulsed brighter, filling the cave with blinding light. But then darkness seeped in. The shadows left unmarked raked hands onto my back. I gasped as I felt the pull, a sensation of tearing away from the moment we were holding on board. "Hold on!" Jacob shouted, and then the light surged anew. The Wendigo recoiled, and for that second I clung tight, feeling the warmth wash away the ice creeping into my veins. The energy intensified, a perfect storm of light clawing through the darkness. I felt pressure against my knees, the walls buckling as the Wendigo fought back. "We have to finish," I yelled, determination combusting into a newfound will. More shadows ripped at me, and I felt the symptoms of panic washing over, but instinctively, I sensed the light meaning to burst forward. I dug deeper, pushing against the boundaries of the darkness as my heart thundered against my ribs. "Now!" I yelled as the brightness reached a zenith, breaking through the last vestige of the creature's hold. The force of our power surged against the Wendigo, and with one brilliant explosion, light consumed the shadows, banishing darkness back from whence it came. And then, silence. I blinked into the dimming light, hearts pounding before they shifted to an eerie calm. We stood, Jacob, Cassie, and I, unscathed. Relief crashed over me as I looked around, unsure where we stood, but hoping against hope it might be over. We made a pact with the light, and that was enough. I turned to face my friends, feeling the bonds between us. But still, questions swirled in my mind. Had we really vanquished the creature, or was it simply hidden? The cave felt different, quiet and still, filled with unsaid words of safety mingling with the unknown. Where would it lead us next? As we gathered to leave, the weight of the experience pressed upon me. It would change things. I knew shadows lurked in every corner. Would we ever forget the darkness? I turned back one last time, catching a glimmer in the depths. But all I saw was silence. "Let's go home," I said softly. But uncertainty lingered, unanswered as we stepped into the unknown. I still think about what we faced sometimes. Did we escape? Or did we merely fend off something that waits? Now every rustle in the wind sends a chill trickling down my spine. And sometimes I wonder, what woke the Wendigo after all? I moved to a different city, but I can't help but think of those woods occasionally.